name is Shroud. Today I have with me Austin, who is currently filming, and Bernadette. We are part of Team 6, and today we'll be discussing the hippocampus, what it does, the location of it, functions and whatnot, damage, what happens whenever it gets hurt and whatnot, and maybe some diseases that are associated with it. And then on the side, we'll kind of have some fun facts that I think you might enjoy. So let's start off. What is it? So the hippocampus is a small curved formation in the brain that plays an important role in the limbic system. It's actually involved in the formation of new memories, and it's associated with learning and emotion. There are actually 2 hippocampi, and they're located apart. So I will be followed by Austin, and he will show you what the location of the hippocampi are.
Hello, I'm Austin. I'm part of Team 6. So the hippocampus location, it belongs to the only limbic system. And like Jacob said, there is 2 of them, one on each side of your brain. It's located under the cerebral cortex. And the fun fact about that, in primates, it's located in the medial temporal lobe. In addition to that, so some fun facts about the hippocampus. It is 100 times smaller in volume compared to the cerebral cortex. Another little story or fun fact, so if your hippocampus were to be removed, you would still have short-term memory, just would not have any of your long-term memory or recollection. Sorry everyone, we switched rooms here. So another fun fact about the hippocampus would be there was a doctor back in the day. He was doing a surgery on an individual who, when he was younger, had a cranium injury that affected his cranium. Dr. Schofield's surgery was going to be a part of removing many vital parts of the brain. He was also going to remove the hippocampus. Several tests were conducted on the individual after the surgery was performed, and there was also tests, one of which involving the memory loss or memory card locations. The study concluded, and memories for about 15 minutes were retained, so the individual would remember anything that was given to him within the time period of 15 minutes, and then after 5 more minutes, he would forget everything, all memory lost. So.
Hey there, I'm Bernadette, member of Team 6, and we are continuing to talk about the hippocampus. The hippocampus is a part of the limbic system, which is a primitive part of the brain, which is involved in behavioral and emotional responses. Some of the functions of the hippocampus are related to early developmental memory or short-term memory, which what happens right there is the sensory data received by the cerebral cortex travels to the hippocampus, where special proteins work to strengthen the cortical synaptic connections. Now, if we move on to how that transfers to long-term memory, what happens right there is a strong enough experience that consolidates over time means that that experience is then going to transfer to the cerebral cortex to your long-term memory.
Okay, so we've gone over the functions of the hippocampus, so we know that it's a pretty important part of our brain. So you may be asking, what would happen if it was damaged? How would it affect us? So it would affect quite a bit of our memory, actually. The formation of new memories, or anterograde amnesia, and what's also known as retrograde amnesia, which would be the degradation of previously stored memories. So things that, memories of you being in the park with someone you enjoy, gone. Another important thing to know is you could also receive what's called hippocampal atrophy, which essentially happens mostly because of the loss of neurons as a result of neural fibrillary tangle formation. So there are also some slight diseases that also affect that area.
One example of how disease can affect the human individual can be seen in Clive Wearing. In 1985, Clive Wearing, who was at that time an incredibly renowned musicologist, composer, and conductor in England, Clive Wearing contracted something known as viral encephalitis, which is a disease that can be either bacterial or viral, which of course in his case was viral. But what happened with the encephalitis is it caused inflammation in the brain tissues, which then extended to the hippocampus. Both of his hippocampi were damaged, both on the left side and on the right side. Consequentially, Clive Wearing was no longer able to retain long-term memory, and even his short-term memory suffered severe damage. For instance, Clive Wearing now is no longer able to go outside by himself. He requires assistance from another individual because once outside, he can no longer remember his destination. He also wakes up and is constantly, continuously under the impression that he's just awoken from a coma and writes in his diary 3 words: I am awake.
So it should also be noted that the loss of function in your hippocampus, whether you have it or it is damaged, does not take away from your intellect. Most people retain full intellect, and some people even, in the case of Austin's experiment that he noted, he actually increased his intellect. It is primarily memory that is affected. There are several diseases that do affect it. So the diseases that are usually affected, that usually affect the hippocampus would be Alzheimer's, depression, schizophrenia, epilepsy, hypertension, Cushing's disease. There's a bunch of them. It's ridiculous. The hippocampus is such a sensitive area, and really it needs to be protected. So wear your helmets and whatnot. So